Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the factions, forces, and faces of the Warhammer 40k setting, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, I now enter a brief period where I take a rest, regroup, and start writing even more. But I do need a break. Alas, I have the urge to do some personal projects in writing, possibly even a novel. So we'll be attempting that in my period off. No, it can't be Warhammer. But hopefully some will think it of worth, if I manage that first draft. A dream for decades, and I have few of those left, so best get on with it, as they say. You never know what you can do until you try. Hence, as usual, I will be releasing some compilations of my own wee stories to tide me over. YouTube can be a harsh taskmaster, and videos need to be uploaded continuously. So, in this period, I put out collections to paint or sleep with. I hope you enjoy this compilation for what it is, and I thank you, gentle listener, for all of your support over the year and years. You truly have changed everything in my life. Thank you. I can only hope that I have made some kind of beneficial impact in yours. Now, to the stories. Raiders. Raider duty. Again. When the galaxy is torn apart, the bugs smash our fleets and devour our worlds. The forces of chaos appear out of nowhere and assail all before them, cutting rough corridors of carnage across our realm. When Xenos fleets muster and assault even our strongest locations, our naval bases and dockyards. When the entire galaxy calls out for vengeance, we get Raider duty. Endless days and even months of visiting convoys, reading reports, trudging from base to base along well-trodden pathways, always waiting, anticipating, always arriving hours after the events, if not days after. We get to witness the repercussions, just in time to do nothing whatsoever about it. Before, if we caught any of these scum, well, we are a cruiser. They were always light ships. So even when we cornered them, finally got the jump on the rascals, it is not satisfying. The engagements end in one of two ways only. They spot us and run for it, or we get the drop and annihilate them. Endless boredom, punctuated by mere minutes of combat. Few even survive one volley, let alone a full broadside. Tedious does not come close. I despise Raider duty. Always have, always will. The captain stays cool and calm. It is his way. Nothing bothers him. But then, nothing excites him either. I have a strong suspicion that the Emperor himself could arrive on our decks, and he would merely bow, and then give an inventory of present arms, enlisted men, and our present duties. When passion was being dished out, this man did not go to the back of the queue. He dodged the event entirely. Every action is an important one, or we would not have been assigned it. Learn to love the chain of command and stay focused on your role, and that alone, was always his mantra. And the shame of it, the crying shame. We stand aboard one of the most powerful weapons of war ever devised, the Emperor's Mercy, an Avenger-class Grand Cruiser. I have no idea what the captain did to gain command of such a wonder, but he did. And when I was assigned to the Mercy, my heart leapt for joy. For surely, thinks I, This is the kind of ship at the very heart of the battle line. More battleship than cruiser. She is a beast. Yet, after the Baldermort Aprix event, let's just say that the captain was not in such high standing anymore. Not negligent enough to have his command stripped from him, but so despised that he was never again to be in command of a full battle group. Some said it was because of his familial ties. A scion of a rogue trader dynasty, he was immune to high censure. It was simply not politique to strip him of his command. So, he was given a small flotilla of escorts and consigned to the backwaters of the trading lanes. And every last man of us, his crew, went with him into this unspoken exile. From the potential to witness real fleet actions, be at the very heart of it all, my career path ended there. The ignominy of raider duty. Oh, we had chased off a few Eldar corsairs, but they never permitted us to get within range of them. Not once. And eventually, they simply moved on to the next sector. Gallant work indeed, forcing small enemy ships one sector over, where the local navy may not have had the patrols we had. Hardly glorious. But finally, today of all days, things have livened up a bit. Coming out of the Mandeville point, we saw them instantly. They'd torn apart a convoy and were lurking over their kill, their spoils. A pair of unidentified ships. Not ours, definitely not traitor ships. And he, the captain, gave the order we had all been yearning to hear. Ahead, full speed. The anticipation rushed across every deck, every section. We were finally going to get to grips with an enemy. We were about to have a true battle. Because the ships we saw, though only 2 in number, were not inconsiderable themselves. Only 2. But this could be a great battle. At long bloody last. As his second, I walked the main stations of the bridge, making sure all was in place. All was ready, and every man jacked there knew exactly what was expected of him. I practically jumped for joy when I gave the order to load arms, the gunnery decks giving off a holler that I could barely contain from emulating. At long last, some real action. Sending our escorts out wide, the captain believed that they could skirt around the enemy and harry their rear. Most ships had less armour and shielding on their rear arcs. There was no reason to believe that this would not be the case, just because we did not know who these buggers were. The Mercy herself, he ordered straight towards them at flank speed. Time to get nasty. The minutes ticked down as we sped towards them. The 2 Xenos ships then flickered into life and powered straight towards us as well. The captain muttered a curse that only I could hear. They would reach us before the escorts could get around them. Their burst of speed would make this a simple battle of 2 on 1, at least for the first few hours. The destroyers would come around and aim right at them, but they had done as instructed and gone wide. Too wide, it would seem. The 2 Xenos ships closed, and we fired our limited front arc weapons. Few indeed for our tonnage, I must admit. The Mercy was designed to get in close and flatten everything around it with broadsides. We had more macro cannon batteries than even a pair of standard cruisers. When we got between these 2 oncoming ships, we would unleash hell on them. I only hoped it would last longer than the one pass. The distance was eaten up, the enemy holding their fire. Then, they did it. Energy weapons fired from their central bulks and slammed into us, and every jaw on the bridge dropped. But one. Their fire, these strange energy weapons, they went straight through our void shields, each one hitting our armour and seeming to scythe through it. Worse, as they continued these volleys of energy beams, They ripped across our hull and sunk into the only places that were weak, the void shield generator arrays. Panic ripped across us, and the only person keeping his head was the captain. He barked out orders and calmly stated to all, "This is their turn. When we get in close, it's ours." This seemed to steel the men. I felt shame when he had to do this. Not me. It was my role. But then, things went from bad to worse. Our fire pitter-pattered off their own void shields like they were laughing at us. And then, at near point-blank range, they unleashed their full complement of firepower upon us. Their own lance batteries slammed into our front and down the very length of the Mercy. They knew exactly what they were doing. Their fire tore out many of our cannons before they even had the chance to fire. The damage reports coming from the gunnery decks were screamed. The numbers they stated in casualties almost unbelievable. And finally, when they flew past us, what remains of our macro cannons fired, only to impact on the void shields of the Xenos. One of their shields flickered down, then another, but before we could get any real hits in, they were already past us. And with their unnatural speed, they turned and wheeled around so they were now behind us. They didn't waste time, firing these beams into us, stripping off our rear shielding. With a white face, I reported the damage to the captain. He simply asked me to patch in a Vox to the escorts. He never missed a beat as he ordered them to retreat, to scatter, to withdraw and take the report of this action to the Sector Admiralty. The last thing I saw was the lance batteries of the Xenos, now carving up the Emperor's Mercy from behind. We never stood a chance. They came from the stars, filled our skies with their vast metallic monsters. Ships were they, massive beasts that could fly from one planet to another, and now we were all part of the Imperium of mankind. Gone were the days of watching the skies for dark shapes that heralded slavery and slaughter. Gone were the days of running and hiding whenever a new set of aliens had found our backwater world. The greater human race had come, and they had brought us into their bosom. We were all one now. One race, one goal, one great crusade. They came amongst us, talked with us, proclaimed the manifest destiny of our people. We, the hurt and hunted, we humans, we were the strong. We were the righteous. We were unified under the leadership of a man who could protect us all. His will, the will of humanity, his will, the future of our race. When these people said I would see the universe, I was agape. It was all I ever wanted, to be rid of the mud hole I had been raised on, to go out amongst the stars and visit the worlds which orbited them, to witness the splendor of the universe firsthand. To live, not just exist. I fought harder than any of our cohort, drilled longer, cleaned and dragged and leapt and ran. I did everything that was expected of me, then more, because I was filled with the fire of the crusade. We, poor pathetic humanity, had so recently been the food and playthings of terrible Xenos races, and with the Emperor and his sons leading the way, the Legiones Astartes carved a path across the galaxy. Finally, it was our time, and we would hunt down our tormentors and end them, one by one. It was a dream. I craved these words, these ideas, but after seeing what horrors existed out there, how could this be done? Then I saw them. And I instantly knew I would be one of them. I had to be. The Space Marines. Knights in armor strong enough to turn even the bolts and blades of the Xenos. So, from that moment on, I was tireless. I had to be amongst their number. Oh, I wanted to see the galaxy, as I have said, but I wanted one thing more, so much more than that. I wanted revenge. And by all that is good and great, we took it from them. The Xenos. Retribution was our call, our role, and our duty. Revenge. The fighting was always hard, even when I managed it. Amongst 100 of my city, only I was chosen. But across our world, it was thousands of us who made the mark, passed the tests. We went through the change, and within months, I was one of them. A warrior of humanity. A Space Marine. Our Lord was not kind or placid, not full of platitudes and high-flown concepts of honor or valor. He was the Red Angel, and the Lord of the 12th Legion, his world eaters. And I adored him. I worshipped him. Few understood why. For them, the Terran Marines, it was all about rescue and reverence, purity of purpose. But for me, it was the same as our Primarch, our Lord. I did not wish to welcome all back into our realm. I wanted to break the Xenos, to see their blood pouring from them, to eradicate them root and branch. And in this, our Lord was of a mind, or so it seemed to me. No restraint, no mercy. All would bend the knee or be exterminated, and all Xenos would be annihilated. When we came to Seriac 17, we came in numbers, for the planet had repulsed multiple assaults by smaller expeditionary fleets. So Angron came himself, and he came mob-handed. We fought our way through their orbital defenses. Nothing could stop his Gloriana-class battleship. And it was the people like me from our home world who helped advise the others. We knew of the Khrave, those horrors who came in the night and took entire cities of our people into their horrid ships. It was as we feared, for this was a densely populated world. Humans, of course, but each and every last one of them was controlled by the Xenos Khrave scum. Where we came down via spear tip, the landing was utter carnage. Endless waves of barely armed human rabble were sent at us. It felt wrong to butcher so many of our own, but it had to be done. We raked them with bolter fire, burnt them with flamers, bombed them from above, all in an attempt to create pathways to get to the Xenos masters. Waves of psyker attacks also washed over us, attempting to dominate us, weaken us, but they did not know the resolve of the Legiones Astartes. We did not bend to their manipulations. Worse, well for them, it enraged us so much that it was difficult for many squads to extract themselves from the carnage, wading through the possessed masses, our ire, a suitable shield from the machinations of the Xeno filth. Yet, when we got into their ancient fortifications, it went badly. They were huge, as large or even more so than we Space Marines, strong, too, equal to ourselves, faster than any human alive, or so they thought, until they tried to match us in close. Their blades swept through even Mark III warplate, if it hit, of course. They swept down on us from above, winged and terrible. They screeched at us as they flocked down, firing their guns that would burn a man from the inside out. But when they came in close, when they reached us, it was all fair game. We were as fast, as strong, and far more aggressive. The power of the Primarch, his sheer rage, suffused all of us. We brought them down by shooting their wings, then pounced on them and tore them apart with chainsaw fist and rage alone. And as their powers dwindled, their waves of psychic power eroded, but nothing of our rage was assuaged. We cut and hewed, bled and burnt, until every last one of them was rooted out and slain. I would like to say that this was a demonstration that they saw our power and fled for all eternity. Yet, even now, half of the reports that come back from the conquered regions are filled with sightings or strife, and it is often the Khrave that are its perpetrators. Foul scum. They should know when they are beaten. But then, the Ghoul Stars are a nasty region indeed. I had hoped the Primarch Angron would lead us into its centre and allow us to cleanse the whole damn place. But we are heading back to resupply and join with other legions. Something is happening. Something to do with the War Master. So, we set off for Istvan. One word. It crashes around my mind like a dreadnought caught in the midst of a rage, smashing into everything, denting, bending, crushing, resounding. It has been weeks now, yet still I cannot shake the echo in my mind. When I wake, it is to sweat-drenched sheets, which I then have to wring into the water reclamators. It is the most precious of resources, and we cannot lose even a drop to tardiness or laziness. A morning ritual I do not look forward to. I had spoken to the apothecaries, of course, but they gave me ineffectual tinctures, bothersome but useless balms. I walk to my station and hear the word whispered in every corridor I pass, each doorway into a room I will never enter. Yet if I stop to see who has mouthed this unwelcome utterance, I find nobody there, or people clearly in raucous discussion. None could or would have done this. Yet I hear it. When I close my eyes, I see it again. Then I hear it again. Those moments that seem scorched onto my very soul. It was supposed to be a simple supply run, as some would say it. Those who live on land, planets or stations. Those who will never understand the situation we place ourselves in whenever we travel. For nothing is certain. If you sleep on a planet, you know the sun will rise in the morning. You know the air will be present. The land beneath your feet will be as it always was when you went to sleep. But this is not the case for us. We travelers, we explorers, we daring souls. Nothing can be taken for granted when you ply the stars. Nothing at all. For each time we set out, each time we return, we do so through the agency of the warp. And in this realm, anything and everything can happen. Yet when we come from that place, when we tear a hole back into real space and return to reality, it is usually over. We have all heard how things can be brought through the warp, can hide on a ship and travel with us, and that they are always malevolent. But this is scuttlebutt. It is whispers from the old and infirm, the young and wide-eyed. Those who will believe anything, or will convey anything to gain attention and a mere moment of being useful and important, simply by the knowledge of a thing. Or so I thought. I used to sneer at such things. Not anymore. For this time, they were right, and I was wrong. We translated back into the void, and there it simply was. I turned from my menial tasks, loading and unloading, counting and noting. Mine was usually a thankless task. I once pretended that if I had simply guessed at each of these details, that not one person on the ship or in the Imperium entire would give a Grox's fart. But it is my role, so I do it. I do it to the best of my ability. I do it for him, for the Emperor. But on that day, I walked with my recording device, the inks and scrolls, and I saw it. Hovering there in the middle of our hangar bay, large, spherical, dark, reflective, a ball of I did not know what. Others caught on quickly and gasped and backed away, making the sign of the Aquila. It did nothing at start, just floated there. And, as I found out later in hushed conversations that had been banned by that point, we all felt the same. It was watching us. Someone contacted the bridge, and down came a gaggle of officers. High rankers who we would usually only see when they were embarking for transit to a planet or station. Stuffed shirts and starched clothes. They were every bit as stiff as their attire. And they, who were supposed to know everything there was to know about voidcraft, having gone through the Schola Progenium. They scratched their heads as much as we did. It did not bob, it did not move. It just floated there, silent. Right in the middle of the bay. Some were trapped behind it, unable to get to an exit without passing closer to it than anyone would dare. There was a mild chortle that only I and others close to the officers could hear. Then one of them cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted for the trapped menials to try to make it around the thing. As they got closer, the thing seemed to shift, like it rotated, but still in place. Although this was more of a sensation, as it was perfectly spherical, no front, no back, yet it seemed to note the movement near it, and the horror began. Inky blackness from beneath it formed up and, it's difficult to describe. It was as if the shadows became solid, as if it weaponized darkness itself. Tendrils shot out from near the globe and slashed towards the menials closest. And it cut them in half. Darkness. It was as sharp as a power sword, as swift as a lasgun, as deadly as an Astartes. And the menials simply, they fell apart. It cut them to ribbons. The chortling from the officers cut off immediately. They called for the room to be cleared. I slunk backwards only a pace or two. I was in shadow all of this time. Now, when I look back, I cannot believe I did that. I hid within an area that I had just seen used as a means of slaughter. But I wanted to see what they would do. In a life of counting and recording and counting, this was perhaps the most exciting thing that would ever happen to me. I wanted to witness it all. I did not once think of the cost. The deck cleared as every menial but me rushed to obey. They dropped whatever they held and ran like it would follow them. Some were knocked over as they barged each other at the bay entryway, so frantic to escape. The next moments were quiet as the officers talked and talked, but so secretively that I could not hear them. I simply watched on. Then voidsmen at arms filled the place. All were armed heavily. The officers all withdrew from the bay as the armsmen set up a semicircle around the thing. Then it got messy. For the voidsmen shot as one, lasgun beams tearing towards the thing en masse, yet they bounced clear off its surface, being sent all over the bay. The thing retorted. Tendrils of shadow moved across the deck and tore into the men, like trees of darkness blooming and burrowing into them in nanoseconds. Many died. The rest backed off and backed up. It looked bad, until another squad entered and one of the voidsmen had a rotating long-barreled weapon. It fired off not las fire, but solid slugs. And this hit the globe, cracking it. He did not relent and kept the fire pouring into it. The cracks became larger and finally it shattered, and white goop spilled from the huge fractures in it. The whole thing dropped and smashed on the ground. It happened. A whirlwind in my mind, all of us together, holding our heads and screaming as it felt like our brains were expanding and would spill out of our very ears. I saw a figure in my mind, shattering as the globe had. Then that one word resounded in every part of me. It was so loud, it seemed to be shouted. But the sound did not come from my ears, but seemingly echoing through my very soul. That one word. Linger. What did it mean? How could it say words in our language when it was dead? Did it linger? Or did we? A day I will never forget. A day I can never discuss with anyone, for all the voidsmen were then transferred to other duties, or simply had accidents. Every single one of them. Nobody knew I was in the room. Nobody noticed me. I cannot get that word out of my mind. What did it mean? Why that one word? Linger. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you have enjoyed these stories, then do consider liking and subscribing, and tipping with a super thanks if I've earned your bounty this day. There is a link to the patron in the video description also, if you feel that generous. But more importantly, now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.